I wanted to start the album with this song because New York has been an important landscape and location for the story of my life in the last couple of years. I dreamt about moving to New York. I obsessed over moving to New York, and then I did it. And the inspiration that I found in that city is kind of hard to describe and hard to compare to any other force of inspiration I've ever experienced in my life. It's like an electric city. And I approached moving there with such wide-eyed optimism and sort of saw it as a place of endless potential and possibilities. And you can kind of hear that reflected in this music and in this first song especially. Blank Space is one of the only songs I've ever written that I started out writing as a complete joke. I think as a songwriter you have to be pretty well aware of who you are as a person, but then I think you also have to have one eye on what people think of you and kind of what the general perception is of you out in the world. And in the last couple of years I've noticed there's been sort of a pretty sensational fictionalization of my personal life. You know, they've kind of drawn up this profile of this girl who is a serial dater, jet-setting around with all her boyfriends, and then, you know, she can get them, but she can't keep them because she's too emotional and she's needy. Then she gets her heart broken because they leave and she's jilted, so she goes to her evil lair and writes songs about it for revenge. It's just kind of this very complex profile of a person. Then I got to thinking about it, and I started to think about how interesting that character is. If she were a real person who had all these qualities and attributes, what song would she write? And I'm pretty sure it would sound a little like this. Style is a song that I wrote about kind of observing fashion trends and cultural trends and seeing how there are certain things that are constants. You know, like, you may not wear a little black dress for a while, but you're always going to go back to it. No one's going to say, oh, red lips are so 2 years ago. There are certain staples. And I started thinking about that in terms of a feeling. You know, there are certain feelings like that. There are certain people that float in and out of your life, sort of like a trend that keeps coming back in style and never fully fades away. And so that was the inspiration behind this song. One of the goals I set out to accomplish when I wanted to make this album is I wanted to make sure that these songs sounded exactly the way that the emotions felt when I felt them. This song is about the fragility and kind of breakable nature of some relationships. This was a relationship where I was kind of living day to day, wondering where it was going, if it was going to go anywhere, if it was going to end the next day. It was a relationship where you kind of never feel like you're standing on solid ground. And that kind of a feeling brings on excitement, but also extreme anxiety and kind of a frantic feeling of wondering, endless questions. And this song sounds exactly like that frantic feeling of anxiety and questioning, but it stresses that even if a relationship is breakable and fragile and full of anxiety, it doesn't mean that it isn't worthwhile, exciting, beautiful, and all the things that we look for. This song was inspired by a weird dream that I had. It was one of those dreams where you have sort of social embarrassment happen and you can't stop it because you're in a sleep state. But basically this dream was about, I was trying to talk to someone, a very important person to me at the time, and all that would come out of my mouth instead of normal words was this very high-pitched singing, "Stay!" And no matter what I tried to say, that was the only sound that would come out of my mouth. I woke up incredibly weirded out and decided that I was going to write it into a song. And I'd already been kind of working on this one song, so it ended up being the perfect kind of weird vocal part that really kind of completed this song that I am so stoked about, called All You Had to Do Was Stay. Shake It Off is a song that I wrote about having to deal with, on an everyday basis, just kind of how human beings treat each other. It's not just me who has to deal with it. It's everybody out there living their lives the feeling of humiliation is the same when a girl has a rumor spread around about her at school that isn't true. It's the same feeling I feel when I am checking out of the grocery store and I read some crazy headline about me. And I think that the way we have to deal with those issues is the same. You have to learn to have a sense of humor about things after a while, or else you'll just live in an endless sea of resentment and bitterness and why are people doing this to me? And rather than writing a song that was victimized in nature, I wanted to write a song that was joyful and gives people a way to cope with whatever amounts of ridiculousness life is doling out to them, but also makes them want to dance. I Wish You Would is a song that I wrote with Jack Antonoff, and it was the first song we ever worked on together. I think for this song, we wanted to create sort of a John Hughes movie visual with pining and, one person's over here and misses the other person, but is too prideful and won't say it. But meanwhile, this other person is here and missing the same person. They're missing each other, but they're not saying it. And I had this happen in my life, and so I wanted to kind of narrate it in a very cinematic way where it's like you're seeing two scenes play out, and then in the bridge you're seeing the final scene where it resolves itself. So it says it's a crooked love in a straight line down. Makes you want to run and hide, but it makes you turn right back around. So it just kind of is like that dramatic love that's never really quite where it needs to be, and that tension that creates. Bad Blood is a song that I wrote about a new kind of heartbreak that I experienced recently, which was when someone that I desperately wanted to be my friend and thought was my friend ended up really making it very obvious that she wasn't. So this was somebody I really looked up to and really, really longed for the approval of this person. And so it was kind of devastating to receive kind of a low blow from that person. And this song was kind of the first time I ever really stood up for myself in that relationship, because she was always the bolder one and the louder one. I think it's important to stand up for yourself, and if you can only really come up with the courage to do it in song form, then that's how you should do it. Wildest Dreams is kind of a good example of the way that my outlook on love has changed. Over the years, I think as you get more experience under your belt, as you become disappointed a few times, you start to kind of think of things in more realistic terms. It's not like you meet someone and that's it. If they like you and you like them, well, it's going to be forever, of course. I don't really look at love like that anymore. I think the way I see love is kind of a little more fatalistic, which means to me that when I meet someone and we have a connection, the first thought I really have is, when this is over, I hope you think well of me. So this song is about having that immediate connection with someone, and these were my vivid thoughts right as I met him. How You Get the Girl is a song that I wrote about how, when we're young, which most of my friends and most of my peers are, a lot of the time you'll take for granted a really good relationship and let go of it and go out into the world and then realize you want it back. And this song is kind of an instruction manual for a guy who has broken up with his girlfriend and let 6 months go by and the lengths he'll need to go to get her back. And it's not going to be as simple as just sending a text message. It's like, sup, miss you. That's not going to work. You need to do all the things in this song. This Love is a song that I wrote very early on in this process. And it was the first time I really started experimenting with different vocal recording styles. In this case, I wanted it to sound kind of haunting. And so I sang this song differently than I've sung most of my other songs. I recorded it differently. You have multiple vocals going throughout the entire song. It's about kind of an experience I had where if you truly care about someone and you know they're not ready to be in a relationship, you will let them go. And it sucks to be the one who has to let something go and cut someone loose when you don't want to, but I think you have to be selfless in in relationships when you know that it's not the right time. And if you make that decision and that person is supposed to be in your life, they'll come back. And this was the way that I felt when that came back around. I wrote I Know Places with Ryan Tedder, and it was the first song that I wrote with him. So I brought this idea in that I had kind of done very roughly on piano and sent him this voice memo of me singing the chorus and kind of babbling my way through the verse. And he liked it and wanted to work on it. It's a song about how other people will really ruin a relationship if they get a chance to, and how it might be the best way to go about starting a relationship to keep it as secret as possible, just because it's very fragile. And I think that this was a song that I wrote about sort of how covert it would have to be in order for me to ever make something work eventually. Clean is the last song on the album for a lot of reasons, but mostly because it felt like a completion of this kind of emotional process I've been going through for the last couple of years. You know, I feel like my personal life was really, really discussed and criticized and debated and talked about to a point where it made me feel kind of almost tarnished in a way, you know, and the discussion wasn't about music, and it broke my heart that I had made an album that I was proud of, and I was touring the world and playing to sold out stadiums, and still they managed to want to only talk about my personal life. At a certain point I felt a switch, and it was at the end of recording this album that I began to feel like my life was mine again, and my music was at the forefront again, and I was living my life on my own terms, and I really no longer cared what people were saying about me, and that was when I started to see people talk less about the things that didn't matter. This song was one that I did with Imogen Heap, who I've idolized for so long, and when I was over in London for the Red Tour, she reached out and said, hey, if you want to come work, I'm here. And so I drove hours out of the city and went to her studio, and watching her work creating the track for this song was the most inspiring experience. She's comping vocals and editing and creating the track, playing the instruments. I was absolutely astonished by that level of talent and skill. So we wrote the song Clean, which is essentially about allowing yourself to really feel pain, and then all of a sudden time passes and you've survived it and you've made it out the other side. The song You Are in Love is one that I did with Jack Antonoff, and it's strange because he sent me the track and I ended up writing these lyrics that very much mirrored what his relationship with his girlfriend and my best friend looked like to me. And the song is kind of told as if I'm looking at their story through a window or something. This album is not heavily based on romance or love, because that hasn't been a huge part of my life, but my friends have been a huge part of my life, and watching my friends fall in love and find meaningful relationships has been one of the most moving experiences. So this song is all about what it's like when you really do find real love. We're not talking like the chase. We're not talking about a phase you go through or a fling. This is what it's like when you find real, true love. And to me, this song is how that feeling sounds.